Welcome to yet another PSP. Today we'll be recapping, or previewing, I should say, our 7th ranked team. That's right, we're starting sort of the second half of the list, the top 7. We are halfway done, and we will be talking about the Seoul Sovereigns today, formerly, of course, known as Inten. Looking back at last year, when they were known as Inten, this team finished in 9th place with a 9-13 record. It was a very up and down season for the team. We saw, I think, a really rough start out of the gate, and then a really strong midseason surge, and unfortunately, just wasn't quite enough for Inten to get his team across the finish line there and into the playoffs. But quite a few off-season trades and acquisitions have the team looking like it's in pretty good shape and could perhaps be turning things around. Let's take a look at the ins and outs. Starting out with the ins, Kyle Teal is sort of both an in and an out. He was lost during expansion, but then reacquired. So Kyle Teal is back on the Sovereigns. We also saw Matt Strom and Quinn Priester come in, a pair of pitchers. Strom, of course, in the bullpen, and then Priester out in the rotation after having that really strong year in Milwaukee after he moved over there from the Red Sox. Moises Ballesteros is another name who is looking to operate as a catcher/DH in the Cubs lineup this year. A pair of Marlins pitchers, Max Meyer and Braxton Garrett, both made their way into the rotation. And one of the most interesting names in the ins list, really across the entire league for me, is Kazuma Okamoto. Of course, coming over from the NPB in Japan. What is this guy going to look like? What is he going to look like in the Blue Jays lineup? How does the power translate? How does the contact, the hit tool translate? I think it's going to be a really fun and a really interesting just case to kind of take a look at. Okamoto was, of course, taken, I believe, with the 5th pick, I want to say, of the draft. Perhaps the 4th. I should have it up in front of me. 4th or 5th pick of the draft is where Okamoto was taken. I believe the 4th pick. Okamoto, I believe it is. Okamoto. He is 29 years old and currently has first base and third base eligibility. He will maybe lose that first base depending on how many games Vlad misses or DH is at. So he might hold on to, first base just for this year, but should be third base eligible throughout the rest of the year. Or next year, I should say. On the outside, we did lose, we saw the Sovereigns lose 3 players to expansion. David Bednar and Garrett Whitlock out of the relief pen, the bullpen there, and then Xavier Edwards, also the, middle infield talent from the Marlins. Via trade, Casey Mize, Ozzie Albies, and Brandon Nimmo also headed out the door. So, decent number of ins and decent number of outs for the Sovereigns. Let's take a look at what their lineup and pitching staff look like to sort of preview how things might be looking this year. So starting off with the lineup, the Sovereigns have Alejandro Kirk starting at catcher after his resurgent year in Toronto. Yandy Diaz will be holding down first base with Nico Horner in his walk year with the Cubs at second base. Austin Riley at third base. Bit of a mercurial case over the last few years. From, maybe 2021 through 23, you want to say he looked like one of the best third basemen in baseball. 24, 25, it was a couple down years. Again, relatively speaking for him. But I think Inten and the Sovereigns will certainly be looking for him to sort of bounce back to that sort of true top-end third baseman type mold in this coming year. Maybe the breakout player of the year last year, Geraldo Perdomo, will be holding down shortstop. Of course, acquired via trade, I believe with Mike, I want to say. Perdomo just absolutely went off last year. I believe he was top 5 in all batter points. Probably not going to see quite that repeat, but this is a switch hitter in a solid lineup. And he's 26 years old, I know he wasn't the sort of top prospect. We all sort of thought Jordan Lawler was that shortstop of the future, but Diamondbacks inked him to a contract, I believe a 4-year deal he signed before last season. They clearly believe in him, and he put up the numbers last year, so it'll be interesting to see if we, what type of a repeat we see on that type of, on that season from last year. Okamoto, who we of course mentioned earlier, is holding down the infield spot. And then in the outfield, going left to right, we have Christian Yelich, Cedar Rafaela, and the man you all know, Juan Soto. Jacob Marcy holds down the outfield flex spot with a little bit of a mix in that utility spot. Right now we have Darrell Hernandez, who is actually a name I was not terribly familiar with. Looks like he plays with the Athletics. But Kyle Teel is likely to mix in there with Tommy Edman as well, depending on when they come off of the injured list. Just looking at Edman right as of now, it looks like there is some type of ankle injury. Let's see what the page, if it'll load up. Yeah. Won't be ready for opening day, but he could be ready at some point in the season. Obviously, Edman will put up some solid numbers there. Ballesteros is likely to get some time as well at the utility position, including also probably a couple other prospects we'll mention soon. I'm a big fan of the lineup. I am. It is, I think, a nice balance of veteran and youth. You have the truest of true top-end talents. I didn't mention this. Of course, Juan Soto does rank on that top 1,000 IBW list. He is ranked at number 2, rightfully so. He is the only batter on the list in the top 100. And I think that's a little bit of a mix of a few things. In Riley, a guy who's had a couple down years. In Perdomo, a guy who really only has the 1 year so far. Horner, who doesn't quite have the power you like to see out of a top-end guy. Kirk, who, similar to Riley, was pretty good a few years ago, had a couple down years, really bounced back last year. So, I think there's a lot of variance in the lineup. I think it's hard to deny that. But I also think in that variance comes quite a few players who have done it a lot in the past. You've got a former MVP in Christian Yelich. I mentioned Riley and Kirk. Nico Horner, and again, IBW is one person's opinion. That contact-oriented approach he had, dude put up a 6.4 season last year, and obviously a lot of that comes from his defensive value, but he is such a valuable just line-drive and contact-oriented hitter, and as I mentioned, going into his walk year, I think we're likely to see some pretty special numbers out of him, and Juan Soto is the linchpin. Projected at 730 points, put up over 750 the year before that. Last year, 780 the year before that, 710 in 2023. So the guy's just a walking supernova of fantasy points, if you will. He's always going to put the points up. And last year, those 38 steals kind of came out of nowhere. 38 steals, 43 home runs, and yeah, on 921 OPS. He is everything you could want for a guy to anchor your order and more. Jacob Marcy, I think, is an interesting name to keep an eye on here. He came, like a bat out of hell out of AAA when he came up to the Marlins. And it'll just be interesting to see what his, season looks like. 24 years old and likely to get run in center field or left field for them throughout the year. So an interesting lineup. I think a lot of upside. Some things could go wrong. You could see that. But I think that there's enough stability in, some proven talent, some veteran talent, and some young guys who are kind of on the upswing that I think this should be a solid lineup through and through. Moving over to the pitching staff, really interesting group. Again, similar to the lineup, kind of a mix of, in my opinion, a very good mix of veteran talent and young guys sort of on the up and up. And leading that list of young guys on the up and up is Nolan McLean. He ranks at number 78 on IBW's list, and he could not look more the part of an ace. I think it's really good for him and the Mets that they brought in Freddie Peralta, so he doesn't need to be the ace. But I think he's the best pitcher on that staff, and I don't think there'll be any question about it by the end of the year. He is sure to sort of anchor down that rotation for Inten this year. Mackenzie Gore, who was acquired by Inten this offseason and moved over to Texas, will be in that 2 spot with Shota Imanaga coming out of the 3 spot. Mitch Keller and Cade Cavalli provide a little, I've been talking a lot about those combos of, a high floor, low ceiling in a guy like Keller, and low floor, high ceiling in a guy like Cavalli, who obviously highly touted prospect, all the arm talent in the world you could ask for, but some pretty significant injuries over the past few years, and is looking to be really coming back this year. And then I did mention that pair of Marlins in Max Meyer and Braxton Garrett, both guys who I think have lots of potential and should get a decent amount of run in that rotation. It's hard to see them not. If I had to pick between those two, I think I'm a little more intrigued by Garrett personally. Max Meyer, the injuries have really just brutalized his career. And I when it comes to a guy like that, I worry a little bit about what, the inconsistency in pitching, how that affects somebody. Chad Patrick's another name to keep an eye on in this rotation out of Milwaukee. He's a guy that could be getting some starts as well. Pretty solid bullpen as well. We see Andres Munoz leading things off. Obviously, one of the big acquisitions last season for Inten, and he'll be closing out games for the Mariners once again. They should be a great team, so we'll get plenty of save opportunities there. Matt Strahm and Tyler Holton are kind of the other two big guys in the bullpen. Neither one of them closers, but definitely back-end guys for the Royals and the Tigers, respectively. So a solid pitching staff overall. I do really like it. I think that McLean is going to look like just a phenomenal piece to have. I'm quickly looking at when he was taken. It looks like he was, so I was wondering about this. He was actually a waiver claim last year. So he was not taken during our league startup draft. He was taken in May, so it was pretty early on, but I think, again, looking at the end of the year, we're going to go, oh my God, this guy was a waiver claim last year. I think that is, that's going to be something we're all jealous that we didn't get in on when we had the time. I think Gore's move to Texas could be really good for him. And then so much stability in those NL Central guys in Keller and Imanaga. I really like what he's got going for a rotation here. I don't think there's a ton of boom potential, but it also doesn't feel like there's a tremendous amount of bust potential. I think the danger is if there are a couple injuries to the rotation, I think things start to get a little scary. If you are counting on Cade Cavalli to make, important starts for you, if Ian Seymour and Dean Kremer are making, regular trips through the rotation, I think that is when things could start to get a little dicey. But with the group that he's got, I think there is a high enough floor and an enticing, if not sky-high ceiling with that group. One more name just to mention, Jordan Leisure, who I think is going to be kind of the lefty specialist for the White Sox this year. I don't expect them to be, a terribly competitive team, but lefty specialists are always, a really valuable piece to have just because of how much they pitch. So I think his 252 projection that he has here is actually kind of underselling a little bit. Yeah, he had some really good underlying numbers last year, and his, the amount of work I think he's expected to get in Chicago will, bode well for that. So mentioning just a few guys on the injured list, we did mention Priester earlier, who is out for a bit. AJ Smith-Shawver just underwent TJ, unfortunately, so he will be out for the whole season. But it looks like Priester should be back at hopefully at some point soon, and will likely factor into that that rotation. Robert Stevenson as well. Now I'm just kind of naming names we got here. A lot of good stuff in this. Some good names. He is a reliever out in Anaheim. He should be back at some point this year as well. So let's talk over some prospects. We do have one that I really like leading things off. It's Robbie Snelling. He's ranked at prospect number 48 per the IBW list. The kid dominated AAA, 1.27 ERA, which with what was described as a double plus fastball. So just that absolute top of the line. He throws it close to 50% of the time, which I think is just kind of a funny old school, like, here's my fastball, try and hit it. Quality curve as a secondary, and he's working on developing a changeup. And similar to Meyer and Braxton Garrett, this guy should get a lot of run in that Marlins rotation after they emptied out a few guys. So He, I think, is a good name to keep an eye on, and is a little bit more starting pitching depth, in the event that there are some injuries like that. Moises Ballesteros, who I mentioned earlier, is still ranked as a prospect. He's prospect number 85 on this list. He's got 20 home run pop, definitely a little bit shaky on the catcher defense side, so he might not keep eligibility for too many more years. And the scary thing is he definitely struggled against left-handed pitching last year when he came up for his short stint at the majors. But this is a guy who has been just a monster at every level he's played at. And hitting in the major leagues is really hard. And I think given a little time to adjust, I think he is going to continue to be that kind of a monster in the Cubs lineup. And then Jet Williams, who ranks as prospect number 89, is the final one we'll mention here. He headed over to Milwaukee in the Freddie Peralta trade. It's kind of an interesting combo of characteristics. He's a pretty short guy, but has kind of a lot of pop, definitely a speed defense type overall. So, speed defense, I think, are his key tools, but certainly more of a power than a hit tool type guy. So you can think sort of a 2019 Altuve light, if you will. Not obviously that, 17 MVP type where he's hitting into the mid 300s, but kind of a lot of power and maybe a little bit of hit tool concern there. So he's certainly a guy who I think will get some run in the Brewers lineup. He seems like such a Brewer, and they traded a lot of their infielders, so I think pretty early on we could likely see him come up from AAA and start to make an impact in that team, and also in the Sovereigns. So we will move on to predictions. I do have the Sovereigns winning the same number of games they did last year. I have them winning 9 games, going 9-12, just a little bit below that double-digit marker, and not quite making the playoffs. I could pretty comfortably see them going 10-11 as well if, some of those players kind of hit their ceilings, but I am just a little bit apprehensive. I think when you look at the team, there are a few too many people that you're counting on either a bounce back or to repeat a year maybe we hadn't seen from them yet or in a while. That, just a few too many of those types of players to really feel comfortable about pushing this team, predicting this team to win kind of double-digit games. So, again, certainly would not surprise me, but I do have this team projected going 9-12. That is, I guess, the beginning of our second half of the list. We will be back again tomorrow. I guess I should say I will be back again tomorrow with the number 6 ranked team. We're inching ever closer to opening day. Looking forward to talking to you tomorrow. And that's us signing off.
Do you know what that makes you, Larry?
Lollygag.
Lollygag.